polls already reflect what Charlie's articulating, Kim. Let me show you what the New York Times Siena poll has today. Among likely voters, and this is July 22nd to the 24th, so that's Monday through Wednesday. This is all post-convention. Donald Trump's at 48, Kamala Harris is at 47. It's just an extraordinary move from June 28th to July 2nd, where Trump was at 49. He's actually gone down a point after his convention and after the events of the weekend in Pennsylvania. And Kamala Harris is up 4 points ahead of where President Biden was. Talk about this reset, which is palpable, reportable, and visible in the polls.
Yeah, I mean, those polls, I believe, are reflecting a lot of things, not only just the past anxiety and angst that that gripped Democrats right after the debate, but also in the time that the voters have had to get to know and focus on Kamala Harris. They're realizing that she's a candidate that really, in so many ways, her message is perfect for this moment. Democrats have been focused on what? Reproductive rights. Since Dobbs was overturned, that has been probably the greatest issue driving the elections since that decision. They care about climate. They have in Kamala Harris somebody who has put that in the center of her political message since the time that she was a district attorney. And then they have someone who cares very much about other rights of people. We have a Supreme Court that not only attacked reproductive rights, but is eyeing other rights, such as for LGBTQ folks. And Kamala Harris was marrying people in California, same-sex couples, while Barack Obama was still talking about civil union. She has a long history, a long track record on the very issues that are driving the electorate right now. You have the enthusiasm, which is important. People will activate when they see enthusiasm around a candidate, and it really blunts this idea that some people are like, oh, America's not ready for a woman, they're not ready for a black woman. I think this is showing that America can be, if you just have the enthusiasm and the support of that candidate behind them. And I think that can allow Democrats to turn that important corner from 2016 or even 2020 and during the primary, when I still heard a lot of Democrats worrying that even though they liked Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren, they were worried that other people wouldn't vote for them. Now we're saying if you support her and you vote for her, she'll win.
Kim, isn't the answer to all those questions, America isn't ready for a felon and an insurrectionist and an adjudicated sexual abuser? I mean, I feel like that question is gone in so many ways. The question is erased by the regret and the remorse about 2016. The question is erased by the sort of stellar conduct of this vice president, as Joe Biden's partner on the campaign trail during those 4 weeks that were excruciating for everyone inside the pro-democracy coalition, by the last 4 days, but also by everyone that looks over at the other choice. That party opted for a convicted felon. That party opted for someone as recently as last year in a sworn deposition whose position is still that when you're famous, you can grab women between the legs because, quote, that's what famous people have been doing for 1 million years. Not sure how he knows that. Who's also been charged with serious felonies regarding the mishandling of state secrets and the inciting of a deadly insurrection in which his own vice president. I mean, are we ready for what? I don't know who you're asking. I don't know who that question is posed to when the other choice would be America's first ever convicted felon and adjudicated sexual abuser.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I know there are a lot of folks who would say, you know, they'd vote for a rock over someone who, as you just described, Donald Trump. But I think what is one thing that is driving the enthusiasm around Kamala Harris is the fact that she presents that contrast so clearly. The contrast between the future and the past, where we have been. People are remembering, some with PTSD, the Trump administration and the handling, the bungling of the COVID response, and the economic problems and the hate, and the vengeance and just terrible feeling of that era. And they're seeing this hopefulness. Plus, she's a prosecutor, and as you point out, who better to prosecute the case against Donald Trump, especially since he has been, in many ways, held to be above the law, whether it's from the inability of a Supreme Court to allow him to be prosecuted for crimes that he consulted, to the way that he has attacked people. Who has been holding him accountable? I think that's one thing that's making America ready. They have seen folks like Fani Willis, like Letitia James, be like Alvin Bragg, actually have some accountability. And so now you have another prosecutor who is a smart lawyer who also happens to be a woman of color. Those are the folks that have been getting this job done. So what better opponent for Donald Trump to face in November?
Clara, it is all future looking. It is wrapped in this message about fighting for freedom, but it isn't precious. Let me share this perfect troll of Donald Trump's appearance on Fox and Friends. The Harris campaign issued this statement. After watching Fox News this morning, we only have one question. Is Donald Trump okay? He praised Project 2025. He's flustered and lashing out. When he isn't lying, he's making threats. Abortion bans are good. Mail-in voting is bad. He's praising dictators because he wants to be one. Worried he made the wrong pick in J.D. Vance. Old and weird. This guy shouldn't ever be president again. If anyone wants an alternative, Kamala Harris is offering one. It is, at this point, certainly firing on all those cylinders of offering this positive message for the future, making a very sharp contrast, as Kim said, but not neglecting the ever important getting under the skin of one's opponent.
Yeah, she's not afraid to do that. Kamala Harris is confident enough to be loose. And by that, I mean, she'll throw some punches. She's not afraid to throw punches. I watched her in hearings when she knew how to make a point, and she would not let the witness up until the point was made. And she did it very, very effectively. And she's going to be able to do that with this guy. And now he is the old guy who can't finish a sentence. And he can't escape that. He can't escape that. That is now seared into the hard drive of every swing voter in America. So and they're going to come after her. Yes, they're going to come after her. But I got to tell you, they've got a couple of problems. And one of the things is this extremism. Most swing voters don't like extremism. They've voted for both parties. They're not consuming politics 24/7 like we are. They are not checking in constantly. They get broad themes. And this is really extreme. This J.D. Vance. Now, keep in mind, not 20 years ago, not when he was in college, just in the last few months as a United States Senator, he voted against protecting IVF. He voted against protecting contraception, birth control, and maybe the most telling vote of all, only 28 senators voted with him. He voted to allow law enforcement to get the medical records of women in America. He thinks it's okay for the police to get medical records. That's jaw-dropping to most swing voters. Not acceptable in America.
Well, and Charlie, he's against Donald Trump in the ways we've been talking about since he was selected, believes Donald Trump is America's Hitler. That's a quote. Cultural heroin. That's a quote. Believes his accusers. He's also expressed decades or years of disdain against Donald Trump's family. He thinks women should stay in marriages if they're unhappy and violent. The top of the ticket has a modern family, the likes of which, J.D. Vance doesn't seem to approve of. He's sort of a cultural scold on a ticket with Donald Trump.
Well, he is a cultural scold, but As you read about some of the votes that J.D. Vance has taken, the comments that he's made, it did cross my mind, did Donald Trump actually vet this guy? Or were they just thinking, hey, I just like the cut of his jib, I'm going to go with him? Because clearly there's a real possibility that he could be a liability here, particularly when women hear what he is saying in this new contrast. But can I just step back and talk about that poll for a moment, showing this race being close? Just keep in mind that traditionally the week after a National Party convention, the nominee has a significant bump, maybe 8 to 10 points. Now, maybe that doesn't happen anymore. But think again where Donald Trump was 1 week ago today before he accepted. The goodwill that was surrounded him after the assassination. Then he has this really, unified convention, and he names the vice president, and he accepts the nomination. In normal politics, he would be flying high this week. The Democrats would have their chance later, but there's no bump whatsoever. And then you also look at Kamala Harris. I mean, she's had an amazing 4 days, but this comes after 3 years where, let's be honest, most voters haven't been paying attention to what she's doing. They really don't know her. And she has been underestimated in the political world, in the media, even among her fellow Democrats. One of the things that shaped this moment were a lot of Democrats said we have to stick with Biden because Kamala would be too risky. And now in the last 4 days, she's come out in this very effective way. And so I think you set aside the poll today, because I think things are so fluid. But the fact that she is doing that well under these circumstances really shouldn't be overlooked.
It's such an important point. This is him potentially at sort of a political apex with the most favorable events and light and attention. And this is her basically sort of thrown out there. This is all her. These are her instincts. Yeah. This is her ability to crystallize a message, animate the base. And this is you're right, it is an important, we don't always focus on the polls, but this is a really important moment in the race.